KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine, and this is Get the Funk Out. Standing by to join me is New York City-based singer-songwriter Joanie Leeds, and she has won first place in the USA Songwriting Competition, an Independent Music Award, a Gold Parents' Choice Award, NAPPA Gold Award, Family Choice Award, and is a John Lennon Songwriting Award finalist and an International Songwriting Competition finalist. She's played at Lollapalooza, Clearwater Festival, the Kennedy Center, Lincoln Center. I'm so amazed. But right now, her latest album, her 9th children's album, All the Ladies, is a female empowerment folk collection produced by Lucy Kalantari, and I hope she'll correct me if I messed up that name, and just released in 2020. And she's in the final round at the Grammy Awards for her Best Children's Album. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Did I get all that right?
Perfect. It was perfect.
Amazing.
Pronunciations, everything.
I was floored when I read your bio. I want to back up. How did you get to where you are now? Did you always know that you wanted to be a singer, a songwriter?
I think from a very small age, I knew I wanted to be a singer, although I really thought I was going to be on Broadway one day and went to school for musical theater and drama.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Syracuse University, which is like a conservatory-based program.
I went to Syracuse.
You did?
I did. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, so did my dad actually. So we have a long line of Syracuse. That's a good connection.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So you know a little bit about the cold. I'm from
Oh,
Miami, so it was a real struggle actually being there.
brutal.
Brutal is exactly
Did
the
he
word.
talk you into it?
No, well, I was always just, I think, you know, I'm not a sports person, but I grew up watching all the Syracuse sports. So I feel like I got it into my head that
Sure.
Syracuse was like this really awesome place to go.
Yes.
And then as I was looking for schools and looking for programs, I knew I wanted to do musical theater or music. I looked at a couple of conservatories that were only music, and then I really wanted to do theater. So Syracuse had an exceptional program.
Oh, yes.
So that's what I decided to do. And I
That's
think
amazing.
in retrospect, I think I probably would have been better suited at like Berklee School of Music, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that yet because I was just a brand new guitar player and I didn't really play. I kind of tinkered on piano since I was young, but not formal piano lessons like
Sure.
Suzuki when I was little. So yeah, Syracuse was a great program. Don't get me wrong, I learned a lot,
Sure.
incredible connections.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much how it had all started. And
That's
then
amazing.
I started playing guitar when I was in high school, just like 2 or 3 lessons, and then I don't read music. I should mention
Oh,
that.
you
So
still don't read, you still don't.
no,
Okay.
illiterate. I play completely by ear. I have a very good ear.
Great.
Um, so when I play piano and all of the other instruments, it's all done completely by ear. And so when I went to college, I was never cast in any of the shows, and it
Oh,
was a real struggle. And so I kind of had to make it my own. And I think a lot of people would have dropped out of the program.
I was going to say, how did you keep going, getting, knocked down?
Well, I had an advisor who was kind of not very kind to me, and she told me that I should become a biology major, leave the program. I'm wasting my parents' money. What are you doing here?
Come
I mean, like
on.
really not so kind. And then
No.
there was another wonderful teacher who kind of took me under her wing and was like, you know, you can do this. And she was
Awesome.
really supportive. So thank goodness for Jerry Clark. And so I stuck with it, but then I branched out and
Mhm.
I took the little guitar that I knew and just kind of kept with it and practiced and
Good.
holed up in practice rooms, those tiny little rooms with the piano. If
Oh,
you've
yeah.
been to one of those music schools, you know, and just started writing. And that was all through college. I just wrote music and I didn't really have a place to put it. Like I wasn't recording yet, but
Hmm.
eventually my senior year, I did record an album, which now I look back and it's like, oh my gosh,
Oh,
it's
come
like
on. I'm sure
terrible.
it wasn't that bad.
It's like all about heartbreak and angst. You know, when you're in your 20s,
Yeah.
you have these problems that
Of
seem so
course.
big in
Of course.
retrospect. Teeny tiny little problems,
It's
but
your musical diary.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'll always have that as this moment that I can look
Right.
back and say, "Oh, wasn't that adorable?" But yeah, I put that out and then moved right to the city the day after graduation. And I've been in New York City ever since. And
It's
I
great.
guess I took a bartending class right before I left in Syracuse because I
Wait,
knew
you
I
took a
needed to do.
bartending class
Yeah, yeah.
at the
at, at
campus?
at the Syracuse Hilton. I think it was the Hilton.
Okay,
And it was all different types of people. It was people that lived in Syracuse, a lot of
sure.
school, people that went to
Yeah.
school there. And it was really, it was, well, because I knew I was going to be an actress or a singer.
Yes.
I wasn't going to be taking a day job. So I needed to do
Yeah.
something for money. And
Hmm.
then right after I moved to the city, I was walking along in Greenwich Village. I was on Bleecker Street and I saw the awning for the bitter end, which I had studied in
Bitter
my
end.
rock music 101 class. And I was like,
Nice.
oh, I know that. And this guy was standing out there, his foot up against the wall, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he looks really cool. And I'm like, oh, I read about this place. I was like such a dork. I was like, I read about this place in my music book. And he was like, yeah, I run this place. I'm the manager, and it turned out to be Kenny. And I was like blown away because to me, I was like kind of starstruck about it.
Of
And he
course.
offered me a bartending job, and pretty soon I was also doing their marketing and promotion during the
Excellent.
day. I was sending out the faxes to the Village Voice, like this is the lineup, and
Village
answering the
voice.
Village Voice.
Hmm.
And so that was the beginning, but I was there Mondays and Fridays. I saw incredible people come through the bitter end, like the most incredible talent. And then I started playing there and he gave me
I love it.
some nights, and that's kind of how it all
That's
started
so
in my
so think about
singer-songwriting.
that. Here you were, like pinch you at performing at the bitter end.
Yeah. And I was like 21 years old, just
Yeah.
brand new. I had no idea what I was doing, like just taking these songs, baby songs.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, though. I learned a lot from watching other people.
Hmm.
I learned a lot playing with other people for the first time because I had never played in a band. Um, and so it was a quick education
Very
that
brave.
Syracuse didn't give me.
I know, but very brave. Very
Yeah,
brave.
and it was
You,
fun.
you know what I wanted to tell you is the reason I said, oh, you took a bartending class, because the first time I learned to bartend was at Syracuse at a place called, I think it was called the Orange Grove. It was a,
Okay, I don't know that one.
yeah, it was I think it was called that. And it was because my job was supposed to be at a restaurant on campus, but there was a fire. And so
Mm.
I lost my summer job. So I immediately went to get another job and they decided to teach me to bartend, and I was complete newbie. But it's an interesting skill because it obviously you're learning about drinks, but you're also learning about people.
People, it's like chemistry plus people.
Yes.
And
Listening, you know.
yeah. And I'm not the best mathematician. I'm much more excel in like the English, the history, and the music, but like the creative parts of it. So when it comes to math, and then you throw into the mix that there's really loud music, and back in the day there was also like cigarettes in the bars. It was just like there was a lot of
A
I'm like
lot.
slightly ADD, so it was
Yeah.
difficult. I was not the best bartender, I have to say. But I stuck with it. They didn't fire me, so.
That's good. How long did you stay there for?
Well, gosh, I think it must have been a few, maybe 3 years. I was there through
Good.
9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I was there, and we were closed for a little while because it was below 14th Street, and then we opened back up. And I think I was there for another year or two, and then maybe I think it was like 2002, maybe 2003, and then I switched to my next job, which was real estate. I've pretty much done every
Oh,
job, and I was temping. I worked at Miramax Films. I worked at Epic Records. I worked in the back of a fashion district clothing shop. I,
the
I've
fashion
literally,
district.
yeah, like
Yeah.
and a lot of answering phones.
Yeah.
At Miramax, actually, I was the casting assistant, which was a really cool job coming from
Sounds
Syracuse, where
cool.
I was like auditioning. So to have
Yeah.
the film set, but I met everybody under the sun, and it was a really,
That's amazing.
yeah. And then all the while doing music
Mm-hmm.
at night until finally I was just exhausted and depressed, and I couldn't figure out like
Oh.
how to propel my singer-songwriter career. And I took a job at Gymboree playing music.
Gymboree,
And
I know that.
you know Gymboree.
I
So
do. My daughter, just take my daughter there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I went when I was younger. I have no recollection, but apparently my mom took me to one of those mommy and me
It's
classes,
cute.
and a friend of mine said, you should really do this. I've been nannying, and it's really fun and working with kids. And I
It
was like,
is.
I don't know anything about kids. Um,
I don't even
but
like kids.
well, because I had like a couple of babysitting jobs, but never really got so into it. My brother's
Sure.
6 years younger.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
It
get
was
it.
never a thing I did. But when I started working at Gymboree, within like a month, I was promoted to manager. So I was like managing the Upper West Side site, and that was also a really good quick education
Hmm.
into the children's world, into the children's music world. But we were limited as far as what we were able to sing because we had to
Hmm.
go according to their
Right.
curriculum. So
Sure.
the children though started really inspiring me, and I started writing children's music at that point. So that's kind of when it
That's
all
great.
started, and it happened really organically because the kids, they would say the funniest things, and then I would come home and I would be inspired to write this song. Or one of the teachers are like, oh, we wish there was a song for this, and I'd be like, oh, I'll write one, but I couldn't
Okay.
play it there.
Hmm.
So while I was
That's
working
great.
there, yeah, I mean, it was it was really fun, and I really enjoyed working with children. And I never thought that I would
Hmm.
in a million years. Like it was just never even like a
Sure.
thought in my mind to work with
Right.
children. Um, but I really value the time that I worked there, and it did give me a lot of knowledge as far as like what different ages of kids are into,
Hmm.
both mentally and physically. So like, a kid that's one is very different than a child that's two,
Oh,
but you
definitely.
really wouldn't know that unless you have one.
Right.
But you're so exhausted that you may not even understand it. But like not having a child and learning through Gymboree was really interesting. And
Right.
then I started my own birthday party business, and I left Gymboree because I started my own birthday party business, which was very successful. And I was working a lot, like 6 parties in a weekend
That's
on
a
the Upper
lot.
East and Upper West Side. Yeah, I know. And I was kind of tapped into the like elite moms.
Hmm.
So I was being driven like with the drivers out to the Hamptons and Deal, New Jersey, and like all of the places, the very fancy houses. And
And
so
what was
that
the
was
gig like? What would it be like?
birthday parties. A
Just
lot of
singing?
very fancy,
Okay.
yeah. I would bring like a portable PA.
Hmm.
Sometimes it was a cappella. I would bring like a suitcase full of scarves and a parachute and bubbles. And I would mostly do my own music. Well, I would say half and half, my own music and then just traditional
Okay.
favorites.
Yeah.
Specifically, if the children were younger, they like those traditional favorites. If they're older, you can kind of get away with some more originals. But
Hmm.
I think through word of mouth, it really caught on. And I did a little bit of advertising, but then after a while, I didn't even really need to. But the
Right.
funny thing about the children's industry is that everybody ages out, and it happens rather quickly
Right.
because, they love you for like 4 or 5 years, and then they're no longer a customer or
Right.
a fan, but
Sure.
maybe their sibling is that's younger if they have one. So
That's
it's
true.
it's like a constantly revolving door of fans.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the one thing that other genres don't really worry about or need to know about.
Hmm.
So interesting.
I love listening to your background because everything, it's like connect the dots. There was never, it doesn't sound like there was one bad move. Like you might have thought at the time, like, why did I bartend or why did I do this? But it really leads to other things. It's so interesting. And your latest album, tell me about that. Because you have some collaborations. I think Lisa Loeb is on the album and
Yeah, she sings on the title track. I'm
amazing.
really, really excited and
I
very
love
proud
her.
of the album. Yeah, she's incredible and just the nicest person ever. Um, so the reason I wrote All the Ladies, which is this album, it's a female empowerment album, as you mentioned, is because, well, let me back up a step. I have 8 previous children's albums that are not really thematic. There's one that's all about animals, but for the most part, every album is mixed genre. So there's like a blues song and a rock song and a pop song, but it's all kind of disjointed.
Yeah.
This one, I wanted to hire an all female team, and I ended up hiring Lucy Kalantari, who I'll talk about in just a moment. But the reason why I wanted to write this album was because I was sitting in the audience in New York City at Madison Square Garden at the 2018 Grammys. And I was just watching from a very high seat and saw that there was not a lot of women represented in the Grammys that night. And I was not the only person that was noticing it. The whole industry noticed it.
Sure.
And I think there was like a hashtag Grammy So Male that came
I
out, and
remember.
people, yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and only one female, I think, won in the televised portion that night, Alicia Cara, for Best New Artist. And that
Okay.
was it. So the backlash was that they said, well, women just need to step up, was what was said that night and reported in Vanity Fair. But during the ceremony, I took out my phone and I was very newly separated, like 2 or 3 months separated from my marriage, and like just, enraged. And I took out
Yeah.
my phone and I'm like,
I'll
ah.
show you.
Well, I don't even think that idea came in
I
my
know,
head, but
but
it was more of like a just, I don't want to say hating men because I
I know,
don't
I
at
know.
all, but I
Yeah.
was just like, ah.
Yeah.
So I was writing, I want to write a female album, and I want the album to be inspiring for young girls, and I want a female producer, and I want a female engineer, female mastering engineer. Like I want everybody, the instrumentalists, like, and I'm just like writing this all. My friends like, what are you, what's going on over there? And then
Good.
by the end of the Grammys, like I had a plan. Um, but I didn't know how to kind of put it into motion because I was an emotional wreck and going through a trial.
Yeah.
Um, so I think once I kind of the custody trial became my new normal and I was able to adjust to like, okay, this is my life now. Then the Annenberg report came out. If you know the Annenberg
Yes, I
Inclusion
do.
Initiative,
Hmm.
it gives all of the stats for the music industry from 2012 to 2018.
Yes.
And basically, for those of you that don't know, it uncovered that women in the music industry, it's like a huge gap and very, very disproportionate to men. And it's not because they're not stepping forward. It's a lot, there's many different reasons. And so the report includes all of those stats as to why this may be happening. But also, the most shocking thing was that there's, out of all of the producers that are out there, music producers, 2% of them are
Or women.
female. Two. And I mean, there's many other stats that are just as shocking as that. But when I
Well,
saw
women
that, I
in
was like,
film too.
yes,
Women in
exactly.
film. Yeah.
Exactly. And they've done a report on that as well.
Right.
So after reading this report, I was like, I can't wait any longer. I'm doing this album. So I happened to be at a show with a friend of mine, and we went out for lunch afterwards with our kids. And I told her my idea, and she is an incredible singer songwriter, Lucy Kalantari. She performs with Lucy Kalantari and the Jazz Cats and won a Grammy for her last album as
Amazing.
well in the children's category. And she liked my idea, and she was like, well, I've actually been interested in producing somebody. So it was kind of like,
Excellent.
perfect moment. And
Nice.
then she was pivotal in putting together the most exceptional team. I didn't know any excuse me, I didn't know any female drummers. I didn't
Okay.
know any female bass players. I just didn't know. I've always worked with all men because
Mhm.
that's just what I've done.
Right.
So for me, I had to change my own
Your
practice
mindset too.
and my mindset.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm was against using females at all. It was just like there are more men that I know, and when they're out sick and they need a sub, like they know men, and then you
Right.
know it's kind of
So who did you get? Who was part of your album?
yeah. So well, we have Lucy is the producer, arranger, and the engineer on the
Okay.
album. And then I'm going on the technical side first.
Good.
We have Denise, who worked for Mona Lisa Studios, and she's the mixing engineer, Denise Barbarita. Emily Lazar is doing the mastering, and she's accompanied by her assistant, Chris. Um, And then all of the actual musicians, I should take out my list so I can read them all because there's
I know
20
I
and I
didn't mean
know.
to put you on the spot, but
No, that's
let's
okay.
give a shout out to them.
Absolutely. Let me actually bring them up
Okay.
because I don't want to forget anyone. Okay, so on the album, we have Lisa Loeb,
Yay.
Carly Shiraki. Carly sings on the opening track, If Girls Ruled the World. And let's see, we have Sonia de los Santos, who's an incredible singer-songwriter as well. Lori Henriquez, who is also actually Lori and Sonia are both Grammy nominated. Polly Hall, who has an incredible podcast called Ear Snacks. She's also in LA.
Okay.
And she's on the title track as well. I'm sorry, excuse me, not the title track, the opening track, If Girls Ruled the World. Amelia Robinson, Mills Trills. She's a really good friend of mine from Brooklyn. Tina Kenny Jones. Her voice is just stunning, so gorgeous. Susie Shelton, another Brooklynite. Edie Carey. She is one of the people when I was bartending at the bitter end that I would just sit there with my mouth open because her voice was just so gorgeous. And she was one of those people where I was like, I want to be like her when I grow up.
Amazing.
Chava Morel, she's from Seattle. She sings the lead on Glass Ceilings. Kyler England, another friend from the bitter end. She's just incredible. She lives in LA. Vered Ben-Horeen, she's doing vocals as well. And then I think we're into instrumentalists now. We've got Nelly Rocha, and she plays the cello and is just gorgeous player. Kaylin Bryant plays upright and electric bass, and she's incredible. Libby Whitenauer plays the fiddle and the violin. She's exceptional. Rosa Avia plays the drums. And, she gave me a really interesting stat that I think there's only 3 female drummers on all of the nominated albums for this year.
That's
And yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah, yes. Lisa Brigantino is playing guitar and djembe on a couple of songs, Mother Earth, Glass Ceilings, and Lioness.
And you
And
didn't know most of these people? These were
no,
by
well, I knew most of the singers. I knew
right.
almost all of the singers. I think
Yeah.
all of the singers, but I did not know any of these instrumentalists. And I think the last one is Lisette Santiago. She plays bongos and shakers on the song Lioness. Yeah, so I didn't know any of the instrumentalists at all. Lucy found all of them and put everybody together, and most of the recording was done in her home studio in Brooklyn.
Wow. Look at that. And before the pandemic.
Yes, the timing of that was happening parallel to while I was in trial, and then
Ugh,
my my trial ended January before the pandemic. So basically and I keep on mentioning that just because you need to know like my emotional state while I'm like
I don't
trying
mean
to
to
produce an
laugh, but
album.
yeah.
No, laugh
Yeah.
away because it's pretty hilarious
Yeah.
and it makes me feel even more, special about the fact that it actually got done
Yeah.
while all of the other things were going on in my life
Mm.
because it was a struggle. Um, but the album was wrapped, I would say, I guess it was at the beginning of that year that the pandemic started. And then the release concert was supposed to be at the Children's Museum of Manhattan on the Upper West Side. And that was March 14th was that
Oh,
date. And so, of course, 2 days before that, I got the call that the museum was
canceled.
closing,
Yeah.
canceled, everything's canceled, New York is canceled. Um, and so I was speaking on the phone, just like so upset to Tina Kenny Jones. And she was the one who came up with the idea of, well, why don't you do a virtual music festival?
Definitely.
But nobody was doing that yet.
No,
There
they
may have
weren't.
been like one or two.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. So I called my publicist and I said, do you think that this is a good idea? Do you think anybody will tune in? Like New York is in the middle of a
Yes.
crisis.
Right.
Will anyone report on this? Because you have to understand, you hire a publicist, you spend a
A lot
crap
of
ton of
money.
money, right?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden this happens and this is the focus. So, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. The actual release date was April 3rd.
Okay.
Um, so I found a friend who had a pro Zoom account
Nice.
who's not on the album, but a good friend of mine. She's not a techie computer person. She had a pro Zoom account, the only person I knew who had one. And I'm like, do you know how
Perfect.
to make it like do the thing where it goes to Facebook? Like it goes, I heard
Yeah.
that you could do that. I mean, this was early, early times, right? And so she's like, yeah, I think I could do that. I'm like, okay, cool. Can you do like a music festival with like
Yeah.
10 or 15 women? She's like, I don't know. I can't see why not. So
Perfect.
it it actually happened, and the New York Times wrote about it with like a huge
Oh, I
picture.
saw that.
It was pretty exceptional.
Yeah.
I was so proud that it ran, and it was in NPR. I think Grammy.com did a thing. Like
Hmm.
it actually got coverage, and I was just blown away. So thank you, Stephanie Mayers, for
Yay.
sending it into the world. And then 17,000 people watched it.
Amazing.
So that was, and you can still watch it for all of you that are
I was going to
listening.
ask you
It's,
where it would be. Just Google it.
yeah, so all the Ladies Music Festival can be found on Facebook. We have our own Facebook page, All the Ladies Music Festival.
Okay.
And then it was so successful that I did a second one in it was with the centennial celebration, the women's centennial celebration in August, and that one is on that page as well. So you just have to kind of search for the videos and you'll be able to
Okay.
find them both.
Amazing. How does it feel right now to be where you are? Not physically, but to be where you are right now with your career.
You know, I feel. Are you familiar with the musical Hamilton at
Yes, a
all?
little bit. Yes.
So you know the part where she's like, "You'll never be satisfied. I'll
Yes.
never be." It's my
That's
favorite song. Yeah, I feel like I'm almost never satisfied. It's
you.
not that I'm not satisfied. I'm thrilled, but I'm like, okay, what's next? You know,
You're
I'm
very
like,
driven and you're
I
pivoting.
yeah, because there's certain things that I feel like I've always wanted to do that I haven't done because of this reason or that reason. I've always wanted to write children's books, and I always wanted to work on getting my music into TV and radio and film. Sorry, not radio. I guess it's already on radio, but you know, like sync
Sure.
licensing.
Yes.
But I just don't have the mental capacity nor the wherewithal to pivot into those places.
Hmm.
And the thing about the children's genre is that you're kind of limited in a way because the genre is so small. So I feel
Sure.
like right now my only, and especially with no touring, the best move for me would be to branch out into these other worlds. And
Sure.
I don't have a manager, so I'm a little overwhelmed about how to do it, but I want to do it. And I really just, I have high hopes for things that I'm able to do. I just need like the direction. So
Right.
if any managers want to manage me
Well, I
or
could
tell me
definitely
what to do.
see, no, I could see you networking with women in these industries and women that understand how to get your music into these shows and you know I have to think about this because I feel like there might be somebody I know or organization I know. Um, you know,
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time on the new app Clubhouse for all of the iPhone users out there. It's actually a pretty incredible place. There's a lot of sync licensing forums where you can go and learn.
okay,
So I've been kind of lurking in the background and asking some questions and putting my hand up. It's for those of you that don't know about Clubhouse, it's not a visual medium, it's only audio. So it's really really lovely, and people are very kind and courteous. And so far, I haven't been in any rooms that are just to feel icky in any way. Everything
good.
seems really really kind. So I would if for networking purposes, that's kind of where I'm spending a lot of my time. But I
Hmm.
obviously, if you know anybody, I'm all ears.
Okay. And I want to ask you, where can people find out more about you?
Sure. So my website is jonieleeds.com. And I have all of the things. I have the Facebook, so it's Joanie Leeds Music for my music page. Instagram is just at Joanie Leeds. I'm not very active on Twitter, but it's at Joanie Leeds as well. And if you're interested in learning more about the album or my previous albums, right now, while musicians are not touring, following us is really the best way to support us. I mean, of course, you can buy an album. I realize not a lot of people are doing that these days, but
Hmm.
a follow is actually even more important in a way because then you can kind of stay in
In the
the
loop.
loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually want to tell you, I met Lisa Loeb years ago when I was living in Boston. She was performing, and then I moved out to Orange County, and she was at a small record store in Orange, California. I brought my daughter. My daughter was really young. They were doing a Daisy Rock guitar giveaway.
Yeah,
She performed. Then saw her at NAMM. I got to interview her. I mean, and I loved
nice.
her children's album and Camp Lisa. And then
Yes.
Meredith Brooks did a children's album. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's so interesting when singer-songwriters they go in that direction and it things kind of completely open up for them.
I think a lot of singer-songwriters, once they have kids, they're like, "Oh, I need to write my own album," and that's what
Right.
inspires them.
Yes.
So I love that. You know, I was actually listening in on the Indigo Girls the other night. They did an online concert, and they started talking about I don't even know if a fan said you should do a children's album, but it was the topic of conversation for like a good 10 or 15 minutes. And like, oh, what would, and I'm like, I'm furiously typing, like, call me Indigo Girls. Like, I'm like the biggest fan
Exactly.
and it would be a dream come true. But when someone that you love and appreciate who's a musician does a
Yeah,
children's album, it's like even so much more better. You know, it's so much better.
definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, no, Lisa's amazing, and it was such an honor to have her on the record, and you know we keep in touch, and she's just a joy.
She's great. One last thing I didn't ask you because you're in Manhattan is how are you dealing with the pandemic? I mean, we all have our ups and down days, sometimes really down. How, because New York has been completely shut down. I was supposed to be there in March of last year, and then I had changed my plans. Westport actually got hit with coronavirus. I was supposed to go there, and then Manhattan, and I had canceled way before I found out. But
Mm.
anyway, back to my question: how are you doing?
Thank you for asking. I'm healthy, thank goodness. So is my daughter, thank goodness. Her school was actually just shut down. She is going in person half of the time
Okay.
because that's the only option that is available through the New York City Public School District
Mm.
um, because there's a couple of cases in the upper grades. So I think if you have more than two cases, they close. I mean, look, it's hard in New York City.
Right.
The spring was really challenging. I left in April for 2 months to go down south to North Carolina to get away because I live in an apartment with no outdoor space. I don't have a balcony or anything. So anytime I want to go outside and get fresh air, I have to go into an elevator and then
Mm.
go way down in the lobby. And
Yeah.
it's things that I say this to my ex-husband, but like the things that were kind of the reasons why I picked my apartment and picked living in this specific neighborhood before for safety reasons have now all become unsafe in a way. It's
True.
like getting into the elevator and having the garbage room and
Mhm.
the doormat, like all of those things.
Sure. But
They
you
were
never would
safe.
have imagined. I mean, that,
No, no,
nobody.
nobody
Yeah.
would have. I feel like I'm suffering a little bit of PTSD, although it's getting a little bit better.
Hmm.
Um, coming, com- Leaving the city was a good move for me because I was having a lot of anxiety. It was just sirens all day and all night
Mm.
for all of March and April, and a lot of June as
Mm.
well when I was back in late May, June, July.
Okay.
It's better now, and I think New Yorkers. It's one thing about our governor. He's been really, really, really straight with us,
Mm.
and he doesn't mess around.
Right.
Not all states have had the same sort of guidance, so I feel
Sure.
appreciative for the fact that New Yorkers have come together. And I cannot say that it's the same in every neighborhood, but in my neighborhood,
That's good.
um, most people are masked up, which gives me some comfort. But I still try to stay out of indoor spaces as much as I can. Um,
Right. I think you
it's
have to.
Yeah, it's been tricky. I feel very isolated. I barely see people other than my daughter.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm looking forward to the day where we can get on an airplane and play again,
I
because
agree.
it's it's hard as a musician,
Yeah.
and I thrive on being around my crowds
Mm-hmm.
and connecting with the audience afterward, and
Sure.
hugging kids. Can't do any of those
That.
things right now.
Yeah.
And that's just like the emotional part of it. I'm not even talking about the inability to make a living right now.
Right.
That's
Right.
also very hard. So, sync licensing, that would be that's the goal.
Just put it out there.
Yes, I'm putting it out into the universe. We'll
That's
see what
great.
happens.
Well, I always say people who are in the arts that are creatives, that gives you something to bring you optimism throughout your days, because performing, learning new things, creating, I mean, it is uplifting. I know it's really hard, um, but you definitely know how to pivot.
Yes, well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I hope to do more pivoting. But I will, again, I don't mean to go into it again, but the whole Clubhouse thing,
Yeah.
um, I have been up probably for the past 3 weeks until 2 or 3 in the morning playing these rooms, with the just the nicest people, giving the sweetest, not it's not feedback, just like full of soul and emotions, and just
Oh,
it feels so good because we've missed that, like,
yes.
being in a space, and you can't see them, so it's just voices, and you're feeling the the inner soul of everybody in the space, and I can't recommend it highly. So if you know anyone who can give you an invite, I would say, and you have an iPhone, I would recommend
So
it.
it's an app called Clubhouse.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just kind of starting, and more people are finding out about it. And there's a lot of different rooms. So the rooms that I like to concentrate in are the music rooms, and like the entrepreneur business rooms. But
Hmm.
there's like mom room. There's all sorts of rooms, and people just talk to each other. It's kind of like a podcast
Yeah,
mixed with it's like talk radio slash podcast
that's great.
slash helpline. I don't know.
I like that. But we need kindness right now and connection. So that's
Yes,
that's a great thing.
absolutely.
But you have to
Absolutely.
be invited to be part of it.
Yes. And everybody that's on it gets like 2 or 3 invites. And
Got it.
then once they use them up, you're granted more. But it's catching on. I'm seeing more and more people come and join, and it's really
Amazing.
lovely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah. I'll give you an invite if you have an iPhone.
I do.
Perfect. We'll talk after the show.
Okay. Joni, I have loved this and congratulations. I'm rooting for you no matter what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.